Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Zombie Train. This is episode number 234, and I'm your host, Ellis, otherwise known as Train Man, and we're watching Under Construction episode 20 or 21, I think. Sped up 8 times speed, and there'll be a little break in the middle because the recording broke when the game crashed. So, if you want all the details on that, go check out the episode itself. It'll be out at the same time, and as I always do, I recommend it for more in-depth discussion on things that are not exactly Zombie Train related. This, if you have any questions or comments or, things you want me to talk about, then I will cover them eventually. They go into a list. The list is rather long right now, but I always appreciate more topics, because I'll make an episode and I'll get like 3 more, and so the list gets longer and longer, and I'm not in danger of running out, but it's cool to have that kind of interaction. So anyways, speaking of which, the topic this week is about the city of Milwaukee, and this was a question posted by tpop311, and he asks, in that case, what happened to the city of Milwaukee? He previously asked me about jet rail cars, but I couldn't exactly have a conversation on that because that's not something we invested in. Also, I'm sorry if I sound a little bit nasally. I have a little bit of a head cold. It's getting to me. It's annoying. But anyways, so in the episode which this came from, which was 206, yes, 206, I talked about Milwaukee Road number 261. That's it's a steam locomotive of the Milwaukee Road. Let me just bring it up again. 261, engine. And, I said that one of the first things we did when we got our hands on the locomotive, because it was very well operable, as a matter of fact, was take it out of town. And the initial idea was to bring it over to Hudson, the town of Hudson, which is directly to the east, and get it a place there, because there are some spurs, there's something that's out of the way. We would have just basically had to slap rail on it, and we would have had a fairly defensible position. We would have had a bottleneck in 2 directions, which would have been awesome. But then we realized with the logistics, there was really no point of going in that direction. And also, it didn't provide easy access to some of the yards. And it wouldn't have faced us in the right direction even if it had. So, we instead decided to move down to... where is it? I just had it and then I lost it. It's a little bit farther away. Actually, is it farther away? Because I just lost it. Oh, there it is. It's Prescott. Prescott here, which is adjoined by Point Douglas on the other side of the river, but there's not really anything there. And it has this sort of... it's a point where 2 rivers meet. And at the point where they meet, there's a long sort of causeway that cuts off one of them, and then there are 2 drawbridges, which are the only thing that connects Prescott to the west, which was super awesome for us, because it meant that we didn't have to worry about the zombies in Hastings, which was right across the river, or the zombies in Minneapolis, or any of the things surrounding it, St. Paul, whatever. Now, so we got it, we did a smash and grab, we got the engine out of there. We actually had hold up there for a couple of days. And then we brought it over to Prescott and we built a makeshift shed on a spur. And we'd bring things in. We had a single spur track there, so we tried to install another one, failed, and later came in and did the job right. But we got the engine in there, we built a shed around it, and then we just parked stuff in front of it when we didn't need it. And then, because the runaround there was sort of important, we didn't want to use that track for anything else. Also, the runaround is long, so it's a passing siding. It's not short. To run around something, you had to go way, 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 way down. So, at any rate, we wanted to keep that clear. We usually did. We ended up not using it all that much. Basically because right up there is a bottleneck and not an actual single-track section. It was not designed for what we wanted it to do, which was run around trains. But we had the 2 drawbridges there, We got in Prescott. Prescott was relatively unpopulated by zombies. We managed to clear it out as best we can. We got all the supplies. We brought them over to the water side there. There's like a... I can't recall if it's apartments or a hotel, but it's a fairly large building, and we took the whole thing over. There's like a yacht club right there, so we started using boats to get up and down the river, and that's how we do some reconnaissance on St. Paul and Minneapolis. Now, because it was to become our basis of our base of operations, for many of the things that went over Marias Pass to the east. I talked about how 261 was used for the east side of Marias Pass until we managed to fix the whole thing, and then it was used over the whole of Marias Pass in tandem with some of the engines in Portland, namely 4449. But Minneapolis was designed to be sort of our end of the line. I talked about how we had electric engines going into Chicago, or we had one at one point. And so, ideally, the original plan was to extend the electrification all the way out the other end, all the way to Minneapolis. So we'd have an electrified line running from Chicago to Minneapolis, and then on the other sides of those, we'd have steam locomotives. But that didn't happen, but Minneapolis was still to remain our base of operations for east side of Marias Pass, and then to Chicago as well. So, Minneapolis is fairly good with its railroad infrastructure. It's just all nestled in the middle of town, exactly as you'd expect. We had one yard on the edge of town which was huge, which we made a lot of use of, and it's actually got a roundhouse and everything like that. And so we basically said we want to get these facilities, we want to get our hands on these facilities. They've got all sorts of stuff stored there, all sorts of parts. Only a handful of stalls, but not a big deal. They've also got a pretty big port there. It was, okay, we need this, they've got an airport across the river. We needed that as a transportation hub. So we planned it up. We got into the yard. We managed to shore up the ends of it, which the north end, there's a little road there. It crosses on a bridge. So we built a wall basically utilizing the bridge. And all the way from there to the edge. And of course zombies could come over the other way, but we had guard posts up there. There were some buildings, and then a large flat area which was for loading automobiles, which there were some there, but we basically built a little tent city on top of this asphalt area. So we had a lot of people in there. We had a couple hundred people there. And so the next step was we went down, we took a whole little island area where there was another swing bridge. We opened the swing bridge, which we hadn't done yet. And at that point, we'd taken 0 casualties. We hadn't seen hardly any zombies, but then they started coming. They started coming in from the north. Primarily, there was a lot of suburbs which we didn't get to scout, and they came in droves and droves and droves. Several thousand in the period of 48 hours or so. And so we ended up expending a lot of ammunition. We managed to hold that line, but we had to drop back because we were going to run out. So we left, and that gave up a lot, because the zombies sort of moved into the area where we were, and pushed us out, down and back. Now, thankfully, I was fearful that we didn't get to shut that bridge in time because we wouldn't be able to get supplies in the other way, but that turned out to not be necessary. What we ended up doing was, we did come around another way with non-railroad transport, mostly on boats, came in, took the airport, and that left us open, but we did it as quietly as we could. That left us pretty open. The only good thing was the airport is pretty well blocked off as is. It's got fences around it and stuff like that. That held for a little while. We got another tent city going on, and what we did was we actually posted up, and the zombies were all across the river, and we started picking them off one by one. So we cleared out a lot more that way. Then we could get another group to come up. So we got like 50 people in the airport. Then we brought up the other like 150 or so. We did lose a handful when we were on the retreat. back up into the yard, got that area cleared out, and that's when we sort of had that area locked down. We started building fortifications. We got the airport, we got the port, we got the yard, and then we said, okay, we've got to go get the other yard. The other yard turned out to be an extension of us. Because we got in there, and that's a fairly large yard. So basically it was thinking, okay, we'll use one for one direction, one for the other direction. We'll get another big engine up here, it'll run the other yard, pretty much. And we'll get some smaller engines in. We already had some people that came in on smaller locomotives, 060s and 040s, that had trekked, like, a great distance. Anywhere from, like, near Chicago to, like, St. Louis, that had come in to help with this op. And so we send out one of them ahead, they get to the other yard, they basically drop off the face of the earth. This was, a dozen people. They were required to report back within a little while. They got there, they did not report back. So we do the boat thing again. We get 24 pleasure craft up the river. And this was a huge expense of fuel. Like, we would have done just about anything else. We could not get our hands on a big ship for this one. Because it was too unwieldy to get one all the way up there, and there was not one available. And also we had to get it through locks and stuff like that, which you can do, because they're set up to do that, but it was easier to crowd a bunch of boats in there that had some maneuverability, because you didn't need to worry about anything. Tugs, running into stuff, anything like that. So we got them up there. We got the locks working, which was, sort of a contingent of a few people being very careful. Getting up there, getting up to the other yard, and that is when, we storm the beaches, we roll in, and we get assaulted. And there had to be maybe 10,000 that had accrued in this yard, whether because of the original dozen that we sent in, or, some were already there just because there was noise and there was action previously. I couldn't tell you. But we storm the beaches, we get in there, and they immediately chase us back, and it's all of a sudden it just feels like we're surrounded. And that is a really bad position to be in. We could get back to the boats, but a lot of us got back in the boats, and it was like a Titanic-style panic where people were departing where they weren't full. And I was completely bewildered, because it's like, haven't we trained for this? Isn't this like our job? But we bail on there, but the bright side is it gets all the zombies to come to the water. And zombies are incredibly durable. But they came to the water, a lot of them jumped in, followed the boats, we all ran downstream. We got to the locks, and we were going through the locks. And they're following slowly. Slowly enough, in fact, that we get back, and then give it a couple days before trying anything again, and we start seeing just obliterated corpses coming down the river by the 100. These idiots, because they're zombies, they're not smart, had ended up going through the waterfall, getting tossed around, getting smashed up. Some of them were still trying to get us, but they had lost, limbs and stuff like that. These decomposing, and they don't decompose that quickly because they are zombies, but these bodies that had been all beat up, and it was like rejoicing. And then, it was still a lot to clear that area. We ended up getting about 1,000 troops in there, and the help of the military and the D Corps to do some scouting and to guide zombies away to kill zones that we had helped them build. But that was the major sort of folly. It was like, okay, we're gonna secure and fortify these yards. The first one wasn't that hard. We got pushed back once we went back and got it. But it just didn't work out in our favor. But after that, and that was a little ways down the line. After that, we managed to get Marias Pass open, and things were a little bit less hectic. But Minneapolis still remained a nut to crack. We didn't go downtown at all. We didn't do it. until much, much later. And I can talk about that if you guys want me to. But for now, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. And I will see you next week. Train Man out.